Hi everybody. Today we're taking a look at Axis strategies for Axis and Allies Iron Blitz 3rd edition. Iron Blitz came out in 1993 and it was the most highly developed computer version of the Milton Bradley original rendition of the game. It had the best AI, it had the best options, mods if you like, an interface and features. And you'll see with this playthrough, we will use Marine units, 4 IPCs, plus 1 attack bonus for amphibious invasions, and destroyers, 12 IPCs, 2/2 attack defense, and they also negate submarines and sneak attacks. Both were really cool units that just add some variety, and I don't think they alter the overall balance of the game in any way. The AI is set to the highest difficulty setting, and I'm letting the Russians attack me on the first turn, as you just saw. So with this video, I hope to demonstrate that it is possible to win with the Axis, and I hope to put to rest any notion that the game is badly imbalanced in favor of the Allies with this video. So right away, you see a few differences from the first video that I made. Finland, Norway went down first. That's probably the Russians' best move. You're going to see British planes flood into Karelia. You'll see a ton of Allied traffic in the North Sea. All the worst case scenario type of things. And so I found with the Germans, you can't possibly play into this crazy aggressive Germany first strategy. You have to be somewhat unorthodox, and I plan on basically melting the British Empire instead of just turtling in Europe with an all-out defensive strategy. I think that's a surefire way to lose against an AI that's certainly on par with maybe the best human players you'll find. So yeah, I am hitting back with against the Russians here. But yeah, I'm going to be mindful to have the ability to flood into Africa, because I maintain that in any of these dudes on a map area control games, you have to take territories that are the most difficult for your opponent to take back. And in this case, it's going to be the British holdings in Africa, anywhere away from their home island. It's the only way to sort of quickly level the playing field between the Axis and Allies in terms of IPC and economy. Just sort of the all-out defense in Europe against this type of Allied strategy, it's not going to work. It's simply going to be a 3-on-1 situation, and you're going to be ground down fairly easily and quickly. So I am trying to create an avenue into northern Africa, and you can see the cost of this was to not eliminate the entire Allied fleet in the North Sea. I simply didn't have the resources, but I'm going to argue that making inroads into northern Africa, maybe build a factory in Anglo, Sudan, Egypt next turn, will be one way for the Germans to survive this sort of triple onslaught here. Yeah, so we see the bombers being built already in Great Britain. Now with the Japanese, I'm going to make a point of taking Australia, and then New Zealand, all of the territories that are super difficult for the Allies to get back, they are going to be on my hit list to begin the game. As you can see here, I'm going to move down into Australia with half of my navy, the southern arm, the southern tentacle. And I'm going to do the Alaska a go-go strategy, because I think that you just absolutely cannot go wrong by distracting the Americans with whatever you can put in that zone. As you know, historically nonsensical as it is, I think it's the Japanese best move, really. So what do we have here? You always have to go for China. Take that American plane out, because all of those aircraft are going to wind up in Karelia in this configuration of Allied attack. Basically, if the Allies are going to show me like the worst possible combination of events, then I'm going to do the same to them. You can't act like a turtle in Europe. You have to just go crazy offensive. If that's what the Allies are going to do to you, then the Axis player has to, be as aggressive as possible, but always mindful of the rolls and first round combat results, because you cannot not chase losses or anything like that. Far East. That's bad. That was a setback, big time, in China for the Japanese. But I have Australia, and that's impossible for the British to get back on their own, basically. They're going to have to rely on the Americans to do that. India. Cost me an airplane, but it's gone. So all things considered, I mean, that's a pretty good, as good opening turn for the Axis as you can expect. I chose to get into the Soviet Far East instead of Alaska on the first turn, only because I'm super concerned about the Germans, and I want to put pressure on the Russians. Yeah. So, the 2 aircraft carriers in the Atlantic for America. They're guarding Alaska. Russians hitting back into Manchuria. That always happens. It's just so frustrating. There's absolutely nothing, it seems, that you can do with the Japanese. Because if you fortify Manchuria, that means like you're not expanding anywhere else. That's history. Wow, look at Karelia. Karelia's gone, Finland, Norway's gone, Eastern Europe's gone. But German economy is still intact. I'm going to build a factory. I'm going to put it in Egypt. Take as much as Africa as quickly as possible, because that just makes the British so weak. Have to move infantry into Africa to fortify my new factory space. Now, I think you would think the priority for the Allies now would be to just grab whatever I'm building in Anglo-Sudan, Egypt, as quickly as possible. I mean, but the problem is, I think the AI is dedicated to just the European theater. But they're going to find out if they ignore Africa, it's going to cost them in the long run. I hope that's the plan anyways. And it looks ugly for Germany, no doubt, right now. But you can see, if you control the Mediterranean, you can sneak infantry up through the Black Sea and grab places like the Caucasus and the Ukraine. You can really trip up the Russians for a couple turns. I mean, those transports aren't going to last, I don't think, because of the Allied bombers. But they did their job for one turn. It looks bad, I admit, for now. But I still have a fairly healthy economy. Whole half of Africa is gone. German Air Force is still in business. We'll see what the British response is. It's going to be bombers. If they're smart, they'll try and get back into Africa right away, but I don't trust that AI to be able to manage this type of strategy. It's going to be Germany first for them, no matter what, I think. Yeah, here comes the bombers. Lost that transport. So what's Japan going to do now? Japan has to take back Manchuria. You see the American aircraft in Yakut there. That's different from the first game I played. The AI in Iron Blitz seems to be more conscientious about their aircraft and how they're used in protecting Russia. So it's going to be more difficult for me. There's still no answer for this strategy though. So try this if you're playing a human opponent as the Axis. With Japan, just absolutely melt the British Empire. It's so difficult to stop and represents such a massive distraction to the Allies that, I don't know, you'll see their Germany first, invincible strategy unravel fairly quickly. Because I mean, those territory losses represent important, economic power. You're going to shift the balance of power rapidly. So once Manchuria goes down, there's only one more line of defense in eastern Russia, and it's being partially held by American aircraft, so that's really expensive and inefficient. But at least it's something. In the other versions, the Allies are just too slow to help the Russians. And I admit, in this game, like obviously my favorite move, getting into Alaska, is delayed somewhat, and that's very unfortunate. But if I'm playing an opponent that's more coordinated and next level aggressive against Germany, then like I said, I'm going to do everything I can to put pressure on Russia and melt the British as quickly as possible. So that explains my move for Australia and New Zealand. That's never a bad idea with Japan. And in this version, I'm actually impressed because the Allies, the Americans, protected Alaska somewhat. So that's an improvement. But you can see progress is slower. And I'm weak on the continent for sure with Japan. Which could come back and haunt me, to be honest. But I am placing my first factory in India, of all places. Usually it's Indochina. So that's the only thing I don't like about the Japanese game so far. Wasn't able to get into a lot, getting bombed in India. Looks like they took back something. Oh, they took the Far East back. Wow. So you're seeing a much stronger Allied opponent here. Germany down to 3 spaces in Europe. Nothing much I could do. The good news is, like, I still have the economy from the stuff that I grabbed in Africa to somewhat compensate for being buffeted so badly in Europe. Which I think that's the answer. I mean, there's nothing else that's going to work. I'm being like triple teamed in Europe. So what else can you do? You have to grab Africa and capture as much as the weak British Empire as possible to compensate. I really don't see how anything else is going to work here. And it still may not work, but you can see I can still play this game in the Mediterranean and Black Sea where you sort of trip up the Russians. And yeah, those transports will be sunk every turn, but at least my Eastern Front isn't, pushed all the way up to the gates of Berlin on the second turn, which it would have been otherwise. So that's why I argue that the strong move against the British, if you're getting absolutely triple teamed with Germany, it's the only answer. You cannot use an all-out defense with Germany if all of the allies are going after it. It's simple odds dictate that it won't work. So surprisingly, after Germany's turn, they don't look too terribly off. I still have teeth with the Germans, and I'm being triple teamed. Russia's got a bunch of wow, look at the American Pacific Fleet parked off the Soviet Far East. That's not good. Just a ton of aircraft in Russia now. Let's go with another factory. Japan. See, now I have a trick for you guys too. Once you capture New Zealand, I sail across the Pacific to South America. Now, not much margin for error because I only got 1 infantry. But if you can save 3 IPCs after your next build, like this, that's another problem for the Allied player, specifically the Americans. You know, waste time moving ships down there. I don't know what I'm going to do with that fleet, though, the US fleet off the Soviet Far East. It's kind of a problem. Have almost no ground forces left in Southeast Asia with the Japanese. Kind of torn here about what I want to do. Alaska's wide open, but I'm so weak on the continent, I gotta put some more infantry in there, into Manchuria. That was risky. At least I have China now, or it's empty. Another factory in Manchuria. Wow. Americans are just stockpiling stuff. See, I couldn't afford this back and forth in Europe if I didn't have Africa. It looks grim, actually, now for the Germans. I'm not sure I can get anything back here in Europe. A couple tanks for Africa and the rest men, yeah. Japanese are really going to have to bail out the Germans now. It's at its sort of tipping point, the game. Yeah, it's bad. I mean, if I go everything against Eastern Europe, if I can just get the infantry, I have to stop immediately though. If this first die roll or first round goes bad. This is the game right here almost. Eastern Europe. Got the infantry. Tanks. See, it's chewing into my Air Force. I don't even know whether I want to press it, but yeah, that was so costly. But it's desperate times for the Germans. But the good news is the Japanese will be right up to the Russian territory next turn. They should be able to, because I can blitz through Persia and then come up from the south through Kazakhstan. So that should, I mean, it's just in the nick of time here. It's literally, there's no margin for error. But here come, yeah, the bombers are coming now. British building up their navy too. It's just funny. AI is caught off guard there. Doesn't know how to respond. All it can do is attack Germany with everything. No ability to adapt to that strategy. Apparently. And that would give a human player fits as well. I mean, it's the last thing you want to be doing as the Americans is sending a bunch of transports and infantry to South America. These attacks into Russia have to work because Germany's about ready to collapse. So this should basically put a stop to the Russians' march against the Germans, because they have to defend their home territory now, even though they're absolutely stacked with British and American aircraft. That wasn't that great. Wow. But it'll be interesting to see where the what the Russians do. Because Japan's starting to crawl towards the Russian province with a lot of hardware here. Wow. Round. Yeah, it's starting to look dire now for Germany. And I have to say too, the Allies with this AI are pretty smart. Like if you notice, the Americans teamed up with the Russians like back to back to take, I think it was, Eastern Europe, and then the very next turn, before Germany could respond, the Russians blitzed a tank from Karelia all the way into the south. That's something you don't see in other AIs. So that's probably like the highest level of allied play you can get. It's not going to get any worse for the Germans. The good news is I still have like 10 men, a tank, and 2 planes. So it's more than enough to take back south and east. But certainly there's not much time left for Germany. So Japan has to do its thing. They left a transport hanging there. I just, have to hope that this... I should do it. Lost the bomber. So people can't say I just got lucky this game, because that was terrible. But remember what I told you before? To get the economic, all you need is pretty much all of East Asia and all of Africa. So I should be getting it very shortly. Isn't that surprising? Only moments ago it looked like Germany was getting wrecked, but I'm telling you, this strategy is really hard to defend against for the Allies. Even though Germany got worked over right from the beginning of the game, all of Africa is gone, all of Asia is gone, East Asia. The economic victory is around the corner, I think. $40 IPC economy with Germany, still, despite all of this. Well, Japan's not going to have the opportunity to invade Alaska, unfortunately, this game. But, I mean, what can you do? I couldn't do everything. Let's see if I can sneak a factory into Brazil. And the Americans aren't responding to it. So they're just so focused on Europe. Russia's in trouble here. Got a lot of aircraft, but being propped up by the Allies, Western Allies. Notice in this game too, Karelia isn't going to be falling anytime soon. The Allies do a really good job of fortifying it to the max. I argue it's the single most important territory in the game. That's about it with Japan. Just put the tanks in there. 3 more in India. Six damage in India. There's the economic. I told you guys. Round 6. 37 minutes into the game. So I'm not sure what you do with the Allies, honestly, to prevent that from happening. It's not easy. So probably just going to fast forward to show you what taking out Russia looks like after the economic. So we jumped ahead, I'm going to say about 20 minutes to turn 9. And this is where I believe it's the Japanese, or maybe is it the Germans? Take Russia? It was on turn 9 anyways. Looks like it's going to be the Germans, I guess. I mean, it's aptly named an economic victory because I think it's a critical tipping point in terms of how much either side can build, and it's so hard for the Allies to reverse the momentum on the Axis once they achieve that threshold. And as you can see here, there's just a ton of aircraft in Russia, but not enough ground units. And between Germany and Japan, it's not going to work out. America tried to get back into Africa, but too little too late. And since they can't build down there, and I can, even if it's only two units, this is going to be the end of the Russians after I take care of the battle of in Africa. Yeah, it's over. So there you go. Allied players. There's many different things you can do as the Axis in standard ANA. So we'll just fast forward to the 2-hour mark, actually. That's how long it took me to get to the point where Japan finishes off the Americans. And after that, I mean, there's no point of even taking 10 more minutes to show you how the game ended. Obviously, once 2 allies are gone, it's usually about 10 minutes before whoever's left suffers the same fate. But Japan developed, I believe it was rockets and heavy bombers. So that explains why America fell before the British in this game. It was much later in the game when Japan started just flooding infantry and men and material, tanks, everything into Alaska. I also sort of crawled up through the Panama Canal a little bit. But with the heavy bombers and all this stuff, you can see what's going to happen. It was interesting, though, that Allies put so much pressure on Germany at the beginning. I couldn't do my Alaska trick. But I still say that that's something you should always consider. If you think about it, if you're just putting infantry there, it takes more than that to dig them out. The Americans have to use not just their own infantry, they're going to have to use tanks and planes. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content coming soon.